In this bulletin, digging deeper into Canon's current spate of suits against aftermarket printer cartridge suppliers. Hello, I'm David Gibbons. The International Trade Commission in the United States, commonly known as the ITC, has started its work to investigate claims Canon has made against a host of aftermarket companies that distribute printer cartridges in the United States. This recent Canon filing with the ITC has put aftermarket manufacturers of printer cartridges into a spin, particularly in China, where most of the products originate. It's not the first time Canon has gone to the ITC. Investigations were held back in 2012 and 2014 relating to the gear assemblies attached to OPC drums inside the printer cartridges. Many aftermarket players in China, as well as the US, have developed workaround solutions that were designed not to infringe Canon's patents. But Canon has successfully filed new patents that now may cause the Chinese imports to infringe. Ian Elliott, the founder and CEO of E&S Solutions, has been involved in this industry for more than 30 years and has been following the Canon versus aftermarket case for some time. Ian now joins me from Tennessee in the United States. Greetings, Ian.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Now, you are making some interesting observations about the recent spate of litigation taking place in the US between Canon and the aftermarket. Of course, Canon is protecting its intellectual property rights, but the motivation would be its market share, isn't that right?
Well, David, yes, I think so. Of course, unless it's eventually determined otherwise, Canon, as of today, has valid US patents, and they clearly believe those patents are being infringed. A patent provides the patentee, along with any of its licensed partners, with effectively what's a government-granted monopoly for the term of the patent. So yes, in short, this battle is about market share, and it's a battle that Canon is entitled to fight.
Now, Ian, you're not a patent lawyer, or any kind of lawyer for that matter, so why this keen interest in this subject?
Well, David, as you know, we're in the consolidation stage of a mature business, and I have a deep interest in how the developments that take place in the final phases are likely to affect the remaining players. It's possible, although probably unlikely, that this round of litigation may turn out to be a defining moment in terms of the battle between new build and remanufactured, and then ultimately in terms of the subsequent battle that will take place for market share between the OEMs and the aftermarket, and that is yet to be determined whether it will be in remanufactured cartridges or in new build cartridges.
The fight over what has become known as the Canon dongle gear suits is about the OPC drum in the cartridge and the metal gear attached to it that engages with the printer to allow it to turn the drum. But in actual fact, the aftermarket designed a new gear for use in third-party printer supplies that would not infringe. The gear ceases to dongle. So who invented the dongle gears that don't dongle, the aftermarket or Canon, given that they now hold very new patents that indicate even the dongle gear that does not dongle to be infringing?
Yeah, it does seem ironic that what we call the 278 patent, which was at the heart of the 2014, the 918 ITC investigation, that it should have spawned 15 or more patents, new patents, 9 of which are now asserted against the respondents, and which Canon claims protects the technology the aftermarket respondents themselves appear to have introduced in order to resolve the 2014 dispute. So, but at this stage, no one knows whether the new Canon patents are infringed or valid, and hopefully this is what the ITC investigation will resolve.
Ian, the word clone is bandied around to refer to an aftermarket cartridge that is a copycat cartridge. Can you explain why you don't think that this term is accurate?
As you say, David, the term clone is frequently bandied around, and it's being attached as a label appearing, in my mind, to discredit any product that isn't OEM or isn't remanufactured. But I think this is clearly wrong, because it's only appropriate. It's only an appropriate label for cartridges that are identical copies of the OEM cartridges. The aftermarket cartridges utilizing the various gear designs that Canon is now complaining about are not direct copies. They're not clones of Canon's current cartridges. However, while they may not be clones, it doesn't mean they may not be infringing certain claims in certain Canon patents. And this is what the ITC investigation will be trying to determine.
You're also concerned, Ian, about the cost of litigation. Why is that?
Well, the manufacturers, they have to accrue for these costs of litigation, the potential litigation, into the cost of its products. So although the manufacturers' indemnifications may protect their customers from the bulk of the costs of the ITC and district court litigation, there are many hidden costs, including damage to their brands and loss of management time to the distraction of the litigation. The costs that are accrued to fight battles in the ITC and district courts should, in my opinion, they should really be invested to improve the attempts to break the cycle of litigation. Every 2-3 years we're going through the same thing, and it's very problematic for importers that are depending on these products to sustain their business. So in my view, this may require additional efforts, both in terms of filing for more patents, and I'm talking about the aftermarket companies now, and filing patents designed for the future. We can't keep designing for today. We've got to be looking forward, just as Canon has done with its continuation and divisional patent strategies.
The aftermarket can be divided into two sectors. Firstly, there are the remanufactured products where the core is collected and reused. The other sector could be called new-built compatibles, and this is where every component in the cartridge is a new component, including the core. Is this correct?
Well, yeah, I would agree this is a good definition of remanufactured versus new build. And this, of course, is the crux of the matter. The new build business model has an inherent advantage over remanufactured. They cost less to make. There are virtually no constraints on supply, such as core availability. And many would argue they are higher quality because they're manufactured from all new parts. So in combination, these factors, they represent a serious threat to the legacy remanufacturers of aftermarket cartridges. And potentially, in the longer term, they could also be a more significant threat to the OEMs than remanufactured cartridges have been in the past. In short, David, new build cartridges represent a disruptive threat to the established order.
In this new round of legal battles, it seems that the new-built compatible sector is the one that is being hammered by the OEM, in this case Canon. Previously, remanufactured products have been the sector which were considered to be infringing in some way. Now, is this a case where Canon is sending out a message that remanufactured products are now acceptable, but new builds are not?
Well, of course, we don't know what Canon is thinking or what their end game is, apart from knowing they must believe they're entitled, by way of their patents and their government-granted monopoly, they're entitled to 100% share of the market they've protected with their patents. It seems logical, as we've just said, that new build cartridges represent a bigger threat to OEM market share than remanufactured cartridges do. And if this is how Canon views the market, and we don't know, of course, but if it is, then it's perhaps not surprising that their current focus is on the bigger threat. However, I don't think this should necessarily be taken as an indication that Canon believes remanufactured products are okay. As we all know, remanufactured cartridges have also been the subject of litigation during the last 20 years or so, and I don't think there's any guarantee they wouldn't be again in the future.
So tell us, Ian, what are the likely scenarios from here on? Will this see the end of new-built compatibles?
Well, as you know, David, I tend to think in black and white terms of how future events and potential outcomes may develop. And, for example, from an economic perspective, new build costs less than remanufactured, therefore new build wins. From a legal perspective, the investigation will or should determine the patents are infringed or they're not infringed, or it will determine the patents are valid or they're not valid. So from an economic perspective, regardless of whether new build are lower cost than remanufactured cartridges, there are many other factors that come into play that prevent new build gaining a stronger presence in the marketplace. It's not just about cost. And from a legal perspective, it would be nice to think the ITC investigation will follow a clear and logical path. We have a group of top-notch lawyers and experts presenting their case for Canon. We have a comparable group presenting their case for the aftermarket. And we have the very best qualified minds at the ITC listening to the arguments and deciding the correct legal and technical outcome. So, although I'm not in any means a legal expert, I suspect the outcome won't be black and white. It's likely to be a bit more muddled. And my gut tells me there's likely to be a compelling argument that some of Canon's patents are infringed. But conversely, there's also likely to be a compelling argument that Canon's patents may not be valid. So whether the proceedings run their full course with Canon willing to risk a potential invalidity finding that results in a loss of their patents, or they simply withdraw them from the investigation to prevent this, so only time will tell.
Thanks, Ian, for joining me today.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
I've been speaking to Ian Elliott, the founding CEO of E&S Solutions based in the United States. And you can go to his website, e&ssolutions.com, to read his blogs on this topic in greater detail. The RT Imaging Expo in Cancun on May 24 will hold a summit on this matter, and the industry is encouraged to register and attend this free event. Merritt Blakesley, a specialist in patent litigation at the ITC and practicing in international trade and intellectual property law, will be joined by Tricia Judge from the International Imaging Technology Council. Both have been keeping a close watch on the Canon dongle gear case and will update the aftermarket at the Canon Summit. And for all the details of these stories and other breaking news every day, go to rtmworld.com/2d or pick up a copy of our Imaging World magazine with the Imaging Suppliers Coalition boss Alan Westerfield on the front cover. Published in English, Spanish, Chinese, Russian and now in Arabic. Thanks for keeping in touch with This Week Today. I'm David Gibbons.